New York Magazine dropped a hit piece on Democratic Senator John Fetterman.
The report laid out concerns from some of Fetterman's current and former staffers.
Most alarming detail in the piece was an alleged episode in February 2023 after Fetterman had been sworn in. The magazine wrote in part that Fetterman, fresh off a hard-fought victory in the cycle's marquee race, should have been riding high, only he wasn't. Fetterman was sitting at a table by himself, slowly sipping a Coke and refusing to talk with anybody. Later that day, another staffer heard an alarming report from a journalist. Fetterman had just walked obliviously into the road and was nearly struck by a car, according to this reporting. Per New York Magazine, a staffer then took Fetterman to the hospital where doctors said he was severely dehydrated.
Another serious claim was that Fetterman didn't get his blood drawn for months, even though his recovery regimen required it. The article also touched on how Fetterman's staunch Israel stance allegedly affected his relationship with staffers and even his wife. In one instance, Fetterman allegedly said in a conversation about a ceasefire to, quote, kill them all. Fetterman denied the account and said any reference to killing was about Hamas only.
Journalist Stephen L. Miller, however, writes on X, remember, John Fetterman was fine and good and only needed hearing aids and was brave and courageous right until he defended Israel's response to the largest mass murder of Jews since the Holocaust. Now he's sick, unrecognizable, and needs to be in a recovery at home. Yes, I actually agree with that tweet. I think this hit piece was ridiculous. First of all, it was sourced mostly to anonymous staffers. Now, it was sourced to his former chief of staff, who has denounced him subsequently and spoken out about him a lot.
That's why Trump doesn't want an enemy, you see?
What do you mean?
Remember I said earlier, Trump doesn't want any enemies, like Waltz, and firing people can create that? This is an example of that, right?
Sure. I mean, yes, but it shows that you can always get, ticked off former employees to badmouth you in private without putting their name to it. I think anonymous accusations can be, that which is presented without evidence can be dismissed without evidence. Now, as for the idea that he's having some mental health crisis or physical health crisis, look, I thought when he first had the initial stroke, or whatever it was, the health incident when he was running against Dr. Oz, I was no fan of Dr. Oz personally, but watching them debate, I'm like, how can this person actually be in the Senate? This is insane. He has to withdraw. He can't be the candidate.
And a lot of people rebut with
that. He appeared brain dead.
Well, a lot of people rebutted that with the fact that they said, this is a big deal that he can actually, have a disability and continue forward is, it's almost like a rising star moment for Democrats.
That's what Democrats and liberal media people said. And we said, okay, fine. So then he's in the Senate.
They also actually has public about depression. So there's a lot of things that he did that make it a more welcoming place for people that are battling.
No, but here's my point. So actually, he's made strides since then. He's recovered, not fully, but substantially. He's much better at communicating than he was before. And now, because his political views aren't liberal enough, now Democrats want to throw him the bus. Now they want to say he has physical and mental impairments that mean he shouldn't be in Congress because he's speaking out in defense of Israel. This is so hypocritical and so evil that it makes me furious. They were going to pretend he was fine to be in Congress when they thought he had liberal politics. Now when it turns out his politics are more right-leaning than they expected, now they say, well, to hell with him. He shouldn't be, he's mentally unfit for it. I think it is ridiculous. Ridiculous, truly.
Okay, I think questioning whether a government official has the fitness for office is something that we've done not only with Fetterman, but across the board. And it's an important question to ask after you've given somebody the opportunity to show what they can do and what they can bring to the table. I think that it was noble for Democrats to say, let him go through. Can he lead in a way that will be effective for his constituents? But now I don't think that it's criticizing him on the back of separating from his party. I think it's just a simple fact of what his staffers are saying. Like, he wasn't going to vote because he was depressed. He was kind of all over the place. He got his wife in an accident, never reported it, not taking the medicine that his doctor is requiring. I mean, these are all serious health, physical, and mental concerns. And like you said,
let's see some receipts.
We need to see receipts and know exactly who all these staffers are. But I mean, when reports come out, no matter how they come out, when they're published in credible sources, then it's time to just review and just take a look, pull the curtain back, and see if there's any truth to this. Because these are not celebrities; these are elected officials.
But they are elected officials, and the staffers are not the candidate, and they're probably, much more progressive than he is. Well, tough, because Fetterman is popular in his state. He has actually become more popular since he was elected. His approval ratings, he is one of a handful of Democrats who has improved his favorability. He maintained his favorability with Democrats and improved it with Republicans in Pennsylvania, not nationwide. I know there's a lot of young pro-Hamas kids out there who can't stand him, but in Pennsylvania, a pivotal swing state, he'd be safer for re-election than a lot of other Democrats in swing states because of the stance he's taken. He knows something, his staffers, and I guess his chief of staff and maybe his wife don't know, and that is to his political advantage. And I just think it's hilarious.
I really don't think that when he fractured from his own party, you can put it all on his stance on Israel, even though his own wife has reported text messages where she's going back and forth.
Well, she can run for office and see.
Yeah, she's not in office, right? But I'm just saying, he pushed every one of Trump's suggested cabinet members through the Senate. And that was one of the things that he had trouble with deciding, whether he should push Gates through or trying to figure out where he stood on.
He didn't push Gates. Gates didn't.
Oh, but he was trying. Yeah, he was trying to see where he stood on some of these issues. But it was like he was just blindly helping out Republicans, and so that's why Democrats were confused because a lot of these choices, Democrats had real questions like their ability to lead because they had no experience whatsoever. And so I don't think that they're asking unreasonable things. And so when you talk about blind allegiance, I don't believe you should just be blindly allegiant to your party and understand exactly what you're voting on. But I do think that Fetterman just straight up went rogue and just does his own thing, which has nothing to do with what he ran on.
Well, but he's chosen not to be blindly loyal to the Democratic Party because he knows that you need to have some breaks with your party if you're in the state of Pennsylvania, which is the most closely divided and important state for the standpoint of which party runs our government. And so he has chosen a couple key issues to break with his party on to make him more likable to Republicans so that he can remain in office and so that Democrats can be competitive in that state. And the party, the rest of the party, and his own staff and maybe his wife want to crucify him for that. And the health thing only being an issue now, there's no way he's in worse shape now than he was at that debate when he was actually running. And they were going to, again, Democrats, they were, just like with Joe Biden, they were willing to drag what appeared to be a corpse over the finish line, contrary to what everyone could see with their own two eyes when they thought it was politically necessary for them to do so.
We're allowed to support people that are going through mental health struggles but also ask questions when they're running important government positions. And I think that has to be fair and a nuanced conversation. I think when Fetterman was running, the conversation around allowing him, if he was going to lead, but when it infringes on some of your leadership because you're stepping away from votes, you're depressed in your office, your wife is all over the office going off about some of your stances. I mean, if she's not in politics, maybe your wife and you should have a conversation about staying out of politics.
Yeah, she seems like a Lady Macbeth type character, and I'm deeply skeptical of her, but
I just think it's always valid to ask, are your politicians okay and are they leading effectively? And I guess we'll see that. You said if Pennsylvania supports him, then we'll see if Pennsylvania supports him, right, in the next coming elections.
I suppose we will. Up next, Dems are blasting their own party leaders. We'll tell you more.